Mocked for their situation, the poor couple found an amazing response that transformed everything. The rain drummed relentlessly on the cracked windows of their worn-down apartment, a mournful accompaniment to Sarah's unease. Tom was slumped on the couch, flipping through a fading catalog of job listings. Their 5-year-old daughter, Ellie, sat cross-legged on the floor, playing with a scuffed toy that used to melt her heart. Each day brought the same gnawing dread. How much longer could they endure this hand-to-mouth existence? The whispers of judgment from their neighbors echoed in their minds, reminders that they were viewed as little more than a charity case. Sarah's eyes darted to the pile of unpaid bills piled like dark storms threatening their tranquility. Though she worked 3 part-time jobs, the elusive promise of financial stability slipped further away, each month more overwhelming than the last. Tom had long since lost the spark in his eyes, and Sarah felt the weight of despair burying the last vestiges of hope she had clung to. As she ventured into the local thrift store to search for anything remotely useful, an old gardening book caught her attention. Its spine was cracked, pages worn, yet something stirred inside her, a vision of vivid colors sprouting from the lifeless patch of grass just a few blocks from their home. But then doubt flooded her mind, a barrage of skepticism threatening to snuff out the flicker of inspiration. Was this idea merely born from desperation? Would Tom scoff at the notion? Facing her husband with barely contained enthusiasm, she found him scrolling through listings, the creases around his eyes deepening with the burden of their reality. She could see him hesitating, eyes darting between her hopeful gaze and the unrelenting bills. I found something, she began, her voice uncertain. A garden, right by the old school. We could another dream, Sarah, he replied, dismissively, without meeting her eyes. The sting of his words sank into her, but there was a spark within her that refused to flicker out. Determination gripped her as she explained her vision, painting pictures with her words of flowers blooming amid weeds, a transformation beneath the eyes of a community that mocked them. As they worked tirelessly to clear the earth, her heart swelled with a fierce hope. Yet the specter of judgment loomed larger than the blossoms they yearned to cultivate. Neighbors peered from behind curtains, casting scornful glances, judging what they deemed futile labor. The psychological pressure weighed heavily on the couple, amplifying feelings of inadequacy and vulnerability. She could see it etched on Tom's furrowed brow. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But as Ellie played among the nascent greens, her laughter a sweet distraction from the rising tide of anxiety, the garden began to flourish despite the neighbor's judgment. But just as positivity started to swell, a knock at the door shattered the moment. A letter from Tom's former employer, threatening eviction over their mounting debts. The despair they felt at that moment surged like a tidal wave, washing over their fragile hopes. Why do they keep pushing us down? Tom muttered, clenching the letter. It felt like a final blow, one that could crush their dreams before they had truly begun. Desperation prickled at Sarah's skin. Digging into that soil had felt like a chance, a spark of rebellion against a broken system. Yet now, the struggle was closing in, a vice tightening around their throats. Would this be all they had to show for their efforts? As they stood in the garden, fraught with unanswered questions, a painful truth dawned on them. They had a choice. But what if the weight of their struggles proved too heavy to bear? In the fading light, dread began to replace hope, thickening the air like impending rain as they prepared for the next chapter of uncertainty. Gathering her resolve, Sarah took a deep breath as she walked out into the chilling wind, the evening shrouded in gloom. She clutched the gardening book to her chest, feeling its worn pages press against her skin like a lifeline. The garden, once an eagerness burgeoning from her dreams, had now morphed into a symbol of resilience. The thought of watching it blossom amidst their struggles ignited a fire within her, rallying against the waves of despair that crashed over her family. But Tom's despondency wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket. But she couldn't let that extinguish her vision. She had seen how Ellie's laughter danced among the greenery, how the simple act of nurturing life brought forth smiles where none existed. This was more than just cultivating plants. It was about cultivating hope that in the distance, an idea began to shape itself in her mind, glimmers of potential within her own grasp. Financial struggles could weigh heavy, yes, but what if, instead of being an obstacle, these trials could lead her to discover unexplored avenues? Resources were scant, but perhaps they could craft a small business, not just to survive, but to thrive. The thought struck her like lightning. They could sell vegetables and flowers, slowly lifting themselves from financial ruin, one seed at a time. Determined to seize this moment, Sarah returned indoors and faced Tom. Frustration flickered in the depths of his weary eyes as she recounted her new vision. A garden is just a garden, Tom. But what if it was more? What if we grew vegetables and flowers to sell? We could find a market to support us, to pull us out of this darkness. Tom shook his head begrudgingly, his heart laden with countless dismissed dreams. You know they laughed at us, Sarah. What makes you think they will buy anything from us? It's a foolish idea. Yes, they laughed, but that only feeds my drive, she replied, steeling herself for the conflict ahead. What if we turned that mockery into motivation? They will see us not just alive, but flourishing. Will you join me? His gaze softened for a moment. There, in those bruised lines on his face, she saw the ghost of the man he once was, the man who had dreams, who had purpose. I just don't know, Sarah, he murmured, the weight of doubt wrapping around his resolve. Finding comfort in her unwavering spirit, she pressed further with conviction. Let us start small. I'll handle selling, and you can lead the planting. It can be our tiny revolution against what life has thrust upon us. Reluctantly, Tom sighed and nodded. The flicker of a plan ignited something dormant within him. They gathered their meager supplies, the trowels and seeds the thrifty store had offered, and set out to work in the evening hush, their hands working the soft earth as dusk settled overhead. Days passed, with both of them discarding the shadows of judgment and walking each day of labor into a new light, taking their time to nurture as they dreamed. She learned about marketing through trial and error. Social media became a canvas for their aspirations. Each time she posted a photo of their budding plants, she received small messages of interest. It felt like ripples rippling across a pond. A flicker of curiosity ignited in members of their community. Could the couple once deemed a failure truly create something beautiful? Yet, with each flower they nurtured, the reality of their looming eviction notice was slashed through their enthusiasm like thunder on a clear day. They had little time to establish themselves, and that reality loomed heavier than any neighbor's scorn. But as they tended to their budding fruit and flowers, a new question emerged in the back of Sarah's mind. What if the community's scorn was only a reflection of their own doubts? Could they truly transform their lives, or were they merely delaying the inevitable? With those thoughts swirling, she prepared to turn over yet another leaf. But the answer remained just out of reach until they gathered the courage to seek it together, hand in hand. Would they rise from this struggle or be buried beneath it? The uncertainty loomed larger than ever as Sarah, driven by fierce hope, wondered how far they would have to go to find the answers they so desperately sought. The morning sun peered through the kitchen window, casting a golden hue on the walls and illuminating the dust particles swirling in the air. Sarah stood at the table, her heart pounding as she contemplated the day ahead. The eviction notice loomed like a shadow over her plans. They had made small progress with their garden, but the thought of it falling through the cracks terrified her. She needed to act, and she needed to act fast. With a renewed sense of purpose, she opened her laptop and stared at the screen, the blinking cursor awaiting her commands. She recalled the frantic messages from friends and family eager to buy their produce. What started as a seedling of interest had potential to sprout into something greater. As she planned her strategy for the next market post, she harnessed every ounce of persuasive power she possessed, determined to ignite excitement in their small business. Every click of the keyboard felt like a firecracker going off in her mind. She listed their vegetables, included vibrant images of their blooms, and crafted catchy captions. Fresh from our little patch of heaven, she typed, her confidence soaring as she imagined their first sale. The online marketplace felt limitless, and she was ready to show the world their resilience. But even as she typed, A flicker of doubt nagged at the edges of her enthusiasm. Who would really buy from us? Echoed a voice from the back of her mind. The shadows of self-doubt crept in, whispering fears of humiliation that would overshadow any potential success. Yet, confronting those voices, she clung to the thought that every business started with a risk, even their garden. With the post live, Sarah decided they needed more than digital interest. They needed a physical presence. A local farmer's market was only a few blocks away, and she envisioned their vegetables displayed vibrantly among bustling stalls. But first, they needed to cultivate literally and metaphorically. They needed to plant the seeds they had been given and nurture them into something saleable. As she approached Tom, she felt a mix of exhilaration and trepidation. What if we set up a stall at the farmer's market? The words spilled from her mouth before she could second-guess herself. That could help us gain exposure, make real sales, and connect with our community. He looked skeptical, but instead of shutting her down, a glimmer of curiosity sparked. That could work, but we need to have a substantial amount of produce. We can't go with just a few vegetables. What if we focus on quality instead of quantity? She challenged. Our garden may be small, but we can make it special. Arrange the produce artfully. Invite people in with our story, our journey. Tom considered this. The wheels in his mind turned, and for the first time since their dream ignited, his determination flickered like a flame. Together they discussed the layout of the stall, how they'd present themselves as passionate growers rather than victims of circumstance, and their shared vision took root in their minds. With renewed vigor, they went to work in the garden, pouring their energy into digging deep into the soil, nurturing the plants more intensely than ever. They harvested with excitement, treating every tomato and flower with reverence. Each item they collected became a statement, a symbol of their progress against the encroaching eviction. As dusk fell, their spirits soared, filled with anticipation for the market. Their journey had gained momentum, but beneath the surface, uncertainty nagged. What if the effort wasn't enough? What if fate had other plans? The tension between hope and fear hung heavily in the air. Just as she was about to close the gate to their garden, an email pinged into her inbox. The subject line sent her heart racing. Market rules and regulations, final call for participants. The finality of those words sent a shiver down her spine. Sarah glanced at Tom, who was preoccupied with their newly arranged produce, blissfully unaware of the stakes at hand. She drew in a deep breath, heart pounding as she clicked. The email opened. In that moment, everything felt poised for revelation, and she knew the choice she had to make could transform their lives forever. How would their little stall fare against established vendors? Would they indeed face the ridicule of others once more? The potential for a new beginning hung suspended in the air around them, waiting for her to take the next step. Each second felt charged with possibility as she read on. Would she dare to follow through with this opportunity or retreat back into the shadows of doubt? Sarah's fingers hovered over the keyboard as a surge of anticipation raced through her. She processed the email's contents, each line resonating with the gravity of her situation. The rules outlined the necessary permits, fees, and deadlines for securing a place at the farmer's market. She needed to respond. Now, with every decision weighing heavily on her, she initiated a list of what they needed. A table, signage, the produce they had just harvested. Could they even afford the market fees? As the practicalities began to pile up, doubt threatened to extinguish her embers of hope. Yet, the prospect of showcasing their hard work ignited a flame inside her that she couldn't ignore. Tom, she called, pulling him from his reverie as he admired their most vibrant vegetable, a plump heirloom tomato glowing under the setting sun. We need to do this. It's our chance. Tom looked at her, his brow furrowed, embodying both skepticism and intrigue. I see it, but we don't have much to go on yet. Just a few veggies and a dream? But think of what it could lead to, she replied, urgency threading her voice. Every business starts small, right? We need to be brave enough to show what we've got. I can create a sign that tells our story, why this garden matters to us. The flicker in Tom's eyes widened. You think our story matters? It's everything. People connect with stories. They see us as the underdogs trying to thrive against the odds. We're not just selling veggies. We're sharing who we are. Tom's gaze drifted back to the garden, where their effort had begun to bloom alongside the plants. A determination, fragile yet potent, took root in him. Let us make it worthwhile then. The next hours felt electric as they crafted signage that detailed the trials that brought them to where they stood, coupled with stories about each vegetable's origin. Every word they wrote became a reaffirmation of their struggles and dreams, transforming their plight into a narrative of resilience. For the first time in a long while, Sarah felt energy surge through her veins, stirring something profound within her. The morning arrived too soon. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of dew and earth as they loaded their small vehicle. As they placed their carefully arranged produce into the back seat along with their hand-painted sign, excitement wrestled with apprehension. When they arrived at the market, it was an entirely different world. A cacophony of sounds surrounded them, vendors chatting, children laughing, and tantalizing aromas wafting from every corner. With each moment, Sarah's nerves began to tangle with exhilaration. Yet doubt still wrapped its fingers around her, asking, what if no one noticed them? What if they failed? But as they unloaded their items, she glanced at Tom. His fierce focus grounded her. Let us just be ourselves, she whispered. The resolve solidified her confidence as she arranged their produce on the table, letting the colors pop against the backdrop of their handwritten sign. As the market opened, the initial rush brought flurries of people to their booth. Sarah's heart raced as she shared their story, her words pouring out with sincerity. Yet, as time passed, they still faced the quiet creep of disappointment as customers hurried past without a glance. The overwhelming sensation of invisibility snaked through her, threatening to unfurl her courage. Then, with a determined breath, Sarah approached a group of curious customers. Have you heard about our garden? She said, her voice laced with eagerness. To her surprise, the group stopped. Eyes turned to her, and in that instant, she felt a shift of connection beginning to blossom as she shared their tale. She caught fleeting glimpses of interest in their expressions. Her heart began to lift, hope breathing into the space that doubt had occupied. But just as she noticed a couple lingering longer than the rest, a booming voice echoed from the stall across the way. Disparaging laughter erupted, mocking the uneven produce on her table. A chill slid down her spine. Would they come to see the beauty she saw, or was this a reflection of their relentless struggles? In that moment, Sarah was faced with a pivotal choice: to retreat into the shadows of doubt or confront the ridicule directly. She felt the weight of that decision heavy on her shoulders as she looked at Tom, who seemed ready to rise to the occasion. Would she show the world that their small garden was worthy of a spotlight, or would she crumble, letting others' perceptions dictate her worth? The moment of truth was upon them, and the path forward became a labyrinth of uncertainty. Would she be marked by the laughter or discover the strength to rise above it? The answer felt just within reach, yet too uncertain to grasp fully. Sarah's heart raced, the mocking laughter still echoing in her ears as she steadied her breath. She locked eyes with Tom, and what she saw reflected back was not just support, but also a shared understanding of the struggle that brought them here. She swallowed hard, determination battling the thin veil of doubt. Let us show them, she whispered, her voice steadier than she felt even as the words slipped past her lips. Tom nodded, his expression shifting to one of solid resolve. He straightened his posture, surveying the scene in front of them with the laughter still ringing out from the booth next door, and then turned to Sarah. What do we do? I'm going to answer that guy, she replied, gesturing to the stall owner, a boisterous man with an exaggerated grin. But not with anger. I want to show that our garden isn't just about perfect produce. With a deep breath, Sarah strode toward the group, her heart thundering in her chest. Each step felt like a mix of defiance and vulnerability, but she began to feel the energy shifting around her, a subtle current guiding her. As she approached, she could feel Tom's supportive presence lingering behind her, ready to back her up. Hey everyone, she began, her voice clear amidst the chatter. I can't hear you laughing, and I get it. Our tomatoes may not look like the ones you expect, but they're special to us, grown with care and in our own little slice of earth. She felt the nervous quiver in her stomach, but she pressed on. They represent something real, the effort and heart we've put into this garden. That's worth something, isn't it? Much to her surprise, the laughter diminished to a murmur as several faces turned toward her, intrigued. Sarah took it as an opening and continued. When we started this journey, we didn't have much. But these imperfect veggies are the culmination of our challenges. Each one tells a story of perseverance. Some customers exchanged uncertain glances. She didn't expect everyone to be won over immediately, but she felt hope flicker like a flame against the darkness of doubt. One woman stepped forward, her brow knit in curiosity. What kind of stories? Sarah seized the moment. The heirloom tomatoes were passed down from my grandmother. Every time we plant a new seed, we're reminded of her spirit and love for nurturing life. She gestured back towards the table, her pride swelling. These vegetables carry with them the hard work, the late nights, the failed seasons, and the joy of seeing things finally bloom. People began to lean in, and she could see their interest sparking as she spoke. A small connection blossomed much like the garden she had nurtured, and the laughter from the stall next door faded into the background. And as Sarah continued to recount their journey, she caught glimpses of recognition on the faces of those listening. A woman even gasped softly at the story of how their pumpkin had survived a frost, only to grow larger than they ever imagined. It was a minor triumph, but in that moment, Sarah felt something shift within her. This was her power to turn vulnerability into connection. "Can I try one?" the woman asked, gesturing to the tomatoes. In a whirlwind of excitement, Sarah handed her the ripest one. In the moments that followed, Sarah found herself enveloped in conversations, fellow shoppers asking questions and expressing interest not just in their produce, but in their story. She could hardly believe the warmth enveloping her as the misfit laughter receded into memory. Yet, just as she began to feel the swell of triumph, she glanced toward the stall, humorously mocking them. The grinning man had crossed his arms, his expression shifting to one of annoyance, the tide of attention slipping from him. The competitive energy crackled in the air, and she realized that the confrontation hadn't ended. It had merely shifted. Suddenly, Tom stepped closer to her, his eyes dancing with excitement. "Looks like we drew some people in. Let us keep the momentum going. I'll start a small demo on how we grow these heirlooms." As Tom began engaging a group with eager explanations of their gardening process, Sarah stood beside him, heart pounding with exhilaration. This was not just about veggie sales anymore. It was about transforming perceptions, redefining their worth. But looming still was the specter of that derisive stall owner, his raised eyebrows signaling that he was taking note of their growing crowd. Sarah felt the palpable tension in the space between them, a challenge waiting to boil over. She could sense the competition igniting within her, the space around her transitioning from camaraderie to rivalry. In that charged atmosphere, she questioned if they were ready for what lay ahead. Would they maintain their newfound confidence while fending off the voices of ridicule? The stakes felt intense, and the challenge they faced was only just beginning. As they prepared for the potential fallout, Sarah's resolve intensified. It was time to fortify their connection with purpose and to stand firm against opposition. But how far would they be pushed? The next challenge loomed dark and uncertain, and Sarah's breath hitched with a mix of excitement and fear. Would they survive the confrontation, and more importantly, would they thrive? The answers awaited just beyond the horizon, ready to unfold. Every question Sarah had once held about her worth and the legitimacy of their effort bubbled below the surface, ready to erupt as she watched Tom engage the growing crowd. His enthusiasm was contagious, but opposite him, the stall owner's scowl loomed like a storm cloud, casting a shadow over their progress. "Are we really ready to face him?" she thought, a creeping doubt tugging at her resolve. The weight of his derision lingered, and she mentally set goals for herself, determined to stand her ground. This is about more than just tomatoes. It's about showing what we can create, flaws and all. As Sarah observed Tom, she felt a shift in her mindset. She was no longer just a passive participant. She could be an active agent in this narrative. With renewed vigor, she stepped forward, catching snippets of their conversation, Tom detailing the precise soil composition and watering schedules. What if I shared my role in all of this? Her mind sharpened, brainstorming ways to add value beyond the produce itself. With a few steps, she positioned herself beside him, taking a deep breath. Every seed planted symbolizes hope and resilience, she interjected, surprising even herself with the strength of her voice. "We faced 2 seasons of drought before getting to this point. Alongside my grandmother's heirlooms, I now also experiment with crop rotations to better support our soil. It's a constant learning curve, feeding both the land and us." Tom's eyes flickered with pride and surprise as he saw Sarah actively contributing, and it emboldened him even further. The crowd absorbed her words, nodding in understanding. The connection was palpable, no longer just a merchant and customer interaction, but an exchange built on shared experiences of struggle. As they spoke, Sarah's gaze briefly darted to their competitor's stall. The stall owner, once smug, was now flustered, mocking laughter from his booth replaced with grumbling whispers. She noted the shift, a tiny victory in their budding journey, but felt it imperative to keep it as a stepping stone, not a summit. "Let us invite them to know us better," she proposed to Tom, then turned to the crowd. "We're planning an open garden day next weekend. Come visit, see how we grow our vegetables, and even lend a hand if you're interested." Now her voice rang clear and inviting, devoid of hesitation. Each word carried an undertone of challenge, an invitation not just to witness, but to participate. The faces in front of her brightened with intrigue. Some even exchanged whispers, contemplating involvement. The stall owner watched closely, his irritation palpable as the conversation shifted away from him. "We can build more than a business. We can cultivate community," Sarah realized in that moment. But how do we balance ambition with authenticity? What if we genuinely welcomed the challenges this rivalry brings? Tom nodded, the light in his eyes matching her growing determination. "We need to engage our audience, not just as customers, but as allies." The adrenaline surged within Sarah. The stakes had only risen. Her thoughts ran through the implications. Could they craft something meaningful and not lose their identity in the onslaught of competition? And there it lay, that internal conflict of wanting success without sacrificing the very essence of what brought them together: sincerity, hard work, and connection through honesty in their struggle. Without realizing it, she had raised the bar, redefining not just her role, but also underlining the profound significance behind their garden. The thoughts of mediocrity flickered dimly as new ambitions dawned. But then again, their success was contingent on the next confrontation awaiting them, the looming tension thickening the air. Would they maintain momentum, holding true to their journey? Sarah felt an urgency within her. Finding their way through this rivalry was paramount, but she now questioned if it would demand a sacrifice. Were they prepared for the personal turmoil that could accompany this growth? As excitement coursed through her, her heart raced with the mix of anticipation and dread. Would they harness their triumph and truly thrive, or would self-doubt creep back in, overshadowing their progress when it mattered most? The answers lay just beyond tomorrow, dense with possibility and challenge. The following week, the air felt heavier, like a storm waiting to break. Sarah stood in front of their modest home, dressed for action but grappling with lingering concerns. The open garden day was a gamble. Could they attract the very people they needed? The pressure to perform gnawed at her, a constant reminder of all that was at stake. Doubt flickered just beneath her resolve as she prepped trays of heirloom tomatoes, the vibrant colors contrasting starkly with her conflicted thoughts. "Will they show?" she muttered under her breath, rehearsing optimism despite her inner turmoil. It wasn't just about the event. It felt like the culmination of everything she had fought for, every seed they had planted symbolizing a leap of faith. Tom was busy organizing tools, his focus steadying her. Their synergy had grown, but the pressure felt different now, less about personal growth and more about public validation. Sarah couldn't shake the sinking feeling that one flub could undo the progress they had made. Each moment scrolled through her mind like a movie reel, scenes of ridicule flashing by. "Let us focus on what matters," she reminded herself. "The produce is just a part of the story." Her insecurities threatened to spill over, and she scanned through their rainbow of vegetables, each one imbued with memories of hope and resilience. Suddenly, the thrill of potential emerged between the rows of leafy greens, and she dared to imagine the crowd arriving, eager to connect. As the hours slipped by, anticipation turned to anxiety. They had set the stage beautifully, yet the space felt devoid of movement, like a stage left empty. What if this ends up being a disaster? She thought, the image of their competitor's smug satisfaction resurfacing. "Let us create our own buzz," she suggested to Tom, a burst of inspiration igniting within her. Maybe some early tastings could draw people in, something unexpected. Tom's eyes lit up as he agreed, quickly pivoting toward their secret stash of heirloom salsa. They whipped up small samples, her apprehension fading as they worked together, laughing at their shared determination. The first guests trickled in, hesitant yet curious, drawn in by the delightful smells wafting through the air. Sarah's heart soared at their initial interest, each smile infusing her with electricity. With each batch of salsa they handed out, she engaged, her voice grew stronger, the falter replaced by enthusiasm for the garden's story. Did you know this salsa is made from tomatoes that survived a drought? Every bite has a tale, she proclaimed, feeling the connection strengthen as faces brightened in appreciation. Tom joined in, recounting the labor behind each crop, while Sarah added, "And we're still learning every day. We want to show you all how this thriving community can grow." The initial awkwardness dissolved, replaced by an engaging dialogue, and for the first time, she felt something shift within herself. Yet, a pang of anxiety still lurked. A few familiar faces from the rival stall emerged, lurking at the edges, their smirks cutting through her burgeoning confidence like a knife. Would they smile only to undermine their efforts later? Surrendering to worry was not an option any longer. Redirecting her focus back to the crowd, she initiated a communal element. "If you're interested, we're open to tips and feedback. Our evolution depends on you too." The words flowed effortlessly, the invitation creating a ripple of conversation among guests. They shared their own gardening stories, transforming their hesitation into eager participation. In that moment, Sarah experienced an awakening. It was not perfection they needed, but authenticity and connection. As laughter mingled with their words, a profound sense of accomplishment surged within her. She could embrace the challenges and vulnerabilities rather than retreat from them. Just as the momentum built, a sudden silence loomed. The competitor advanced toward their group, oddly bold and brazen, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "And what exactly makes your little garden worthy of attention? How quaint." All eyes sharpened upon Sarah, tension thick in the air. She would either retreat or confront this head-on. The moment had come. Would she let doubt trip her up again, or would she boldly reflect the spirit of their journey? Her heart raced. Choices awaited her that could either evolve into triumph or bitter defeat. As she gathered her breath to respond, the reality of their rivalry redefined itself. The stakes felt impossibly high, yet maybe this was the very challenge she had coveted. Would they transform this confrontation into an opportunity to display their strength? She squared her shoulders, tension easing into resolve. "Let us show him what we're truly made of," she thought fiercely. The sharpness of the rival's words hung in the air, piercing through the excitement Sarah had built. The crowd, still buzzing from their earlier conversation, shifted their attention, creating a palpable tension that wrapped around her like a heavy cloak. In that brief moment, she felt the sickening weight of doubt creeping back. Would they see her as a fraud? Was she clinging to a fantasy of success that wouldn't materialize? But a flicker of realization ignited within her. This was not just about her. It was about all they had fought for, the countless hours spent nurturing their garden, which had become so much more than produce. It was a sanctuary of growth, of resilience, a symbol of their shared journey. Taking a breath, Sarah faced the competitor, forcing her chin to rise with the confidence she barely felt. "What makes our garden worthy?" she echoed, letting the words hang between them, almost daring him to respond. "It's the very essence of what we do, the stories behind each crop, the lessons we've learned from our failures, and our commitment to this community." The rival's smirk faltered, his bravado slipping as the crowd's interest peaked. She could feel their skepticism softening, an invitation for them to share in her conviction. "We may not have the flashiness of a big operation, but we know each plant intimately. Every growing season tells us something new. It challenges us and inspires us to adapt. Aren't those the qualities that matter most?" This time, as she spoke, her voice was steadier, laced with a sincerity that she wasn't sure she possessed. A ripple of murmurs coursed through the crowd, heads nodding in quiet agreement. She pressed on, urgency driving her words. "If you believe that growth comes from shiny exteriors alone, then what have we truly learned? Real strength stems from our vulnerabilities and our willingness to improve, to learn from the soil and each other." Tom stepped in, his passion igniting with her energy. "It's about connection between us and the earth, and between us and you. We want to inspire, to teach, and to grow not just ourselves, but together. His enthusiasm was infectious, transforming the atmosphere. People began to lean in, eager to absorb the essence of what they had created. As Sarah watched the crowd shift from skeptical to intrigued, she recognized her own evolution reflected in their faces. The once raised eyebrows softened, replacing hostility with curiosity. "Can I give this a try?" someone from the audience asked, tentatively picking up a chip piled with salsa. Laughter returned among their group, deflating the tension as she handed it over with an encouraging nod. "Definitely. Let us know what you think." As more visitors joined in, tasting and conversing, Sarah felt lighter. Each interaction was a testament to their hard work, a reminder that the garden was more than just produce, it was about forging connections. With every bite taken and every story shared, she realized the most profound impact they could share was their authenticity. But beneath the revelry, a nagging thought pulsed at her, persistent and clawing. Was it enough? The taller shadows of competition loomed, an ever-present reminder of the stakes they faced. Her gut twisted at the thought of failing when they had fought so hard to stand tall. Wouldn't he just love to see us falter? Sarah felt that familiar fear creeping in, but now it harbored a fierce determination instead of retreat. They weren't just battling him. They were engaged in a grander struggle, one that involved believing in themselves and the vision they shared. A sudden surge of clarity flowed through her. She had to speak with the same sincerity she delivered to the crowd, to reclaim any semblance of control over her narrative. "Let us not just respond to him," she thought. "Let us chart our own course forward." With the crowd bustling around her, she realized they were on the brink of something larger, a revelation about who they were becoming and the impact they could make. As the weight of expectation lifted, she understood that working together meant standing firm, not just for their garden but for all who believed in them. And as she glanced back at her rival, she saw more than just a competitor. He was a catalyst for their transformation. Perhaps this confrontation was the spark they needed to not just tell their story, but to show it in vivid, undeniable color. Ready for the next step? She thought, a fiery resolve igniting within her. Just then, the clamor of excitement enveloped her, but a question crystallized in her mind. Where do we go from here? What will it take to rise above, once and for all? The crowd moved with a newfound energy, and Sarah could feel the pulse of excitement all around her. Every laugh, every bite taken, felt like a reaffirmation of her vision, a mosaic assembled from the fragments of their struggles. But beneath that celebratory vibe lurked a question that continued to reshuffle her instincts. How could they maintain this momentum? After the last lingering taste of salsa had faded, Sarah took a moment to step back, her mind racing. Although the tension had shifted in her favor, she couldn't shake off the underlying worry that this small victory was fleeting. Their competitor would not rest. He represented an entrenched attitude that thrived on superficiality and status. Okay, we showed them, but can we keep their attention? She pondered, pacing slightly away from the flurry of tasting and laughter. The garden's heart had goodness to offer. How could they package it so that it wasn't just a fleeting experience? They had to create something indelible. Tom approached, noticing her momentary retreat from the festivities. "What is on your mind?" he asked, genuine concern lacing his voice. "We need to engage them," she said, her mind swirling with ideas. "We can't just be a pretty view or a taste on the tip of their tongues. We have to draw them into our story, to make them stakeholders in what we're building." Tom's brow furrowed slightly as he listened intently. That's the spirit. But how do we do that? "I think we need events, workshops, tours, something that invites them into the garden and shows them how to grow, not just in terms of plants but in their own lives." She felt the warmth of excitement course through her. Tom nodded slowly, the spark returning to his eyes. "We can show them how they can try growing their own food at home. We can teach them basic gardening techniques. It's not just about what we produce. It's about empowering them." Sarah's heart raced at the magnitude of that idea, layered with creativity and possibility. This approach held the power to rewrite their narrative. Yes, it makes sense. Not only does it address our struggle with competition, but it could help foster resilience in our community. We're sharing what we've learned, the value of perseverance through challenges. The prospect of creating such a program summoned exhilaration that fluttered in her chest. It wasn't just about their garden. It was about fostering independence, nurturing confidence, and instilling the lesson that it's okay to fail as long as you keep growing. "Let us plan it out," Sarah announced, determination threading through her voice. "We can start small, with one weekend workshop. We'll promote it through social media. Maybe a simple flyer around town." Her mind spun with logistical thoughts interspersed with enthusiasm. As they discussed the details, Sarah felt a renewed sense of clarity. This wasn't merely an operational decision. It represented a personal evolution from feeling defensive to taking ownership of their mission. Every interaction and lesson shared resonated deeper than she had initially thought. She relished the thought of not just selling produce, but transforming lives, however small. Images of their competitors' disdainful smirk flashed through her mind, stoking a stubborn resolve. How much would they laugh if they saw us now? She mused, heartened by the thought of flipping their skepticism on its head. With each plan they laid, Sarah found herself shedding the remnants of self-doubt. Every scenario was a step towards the position of control she craved. Each idea was a small rebellion against the notion that they were insufficient. They spent the rest of the day sketching out ideas, a palpable sense of purpose settling over them like a warm blanket. The more she envisioned the workshops, the more solid her confidence became. Sarah realized the power of truly understanding her worth. She wasn't merely a gardener, but a teacher and a shepherd of community growth. As evening dipped into dusk, she stood by their garden, absorbing the vibrant hues, the plants swaying gently in the breeze. The reality of what they were about to embark upon settled on her shoulders like a mantle of intention. But as the sky darkened, another thought flashed across her mind, driving urgency into her chest. What doubts would they face from outside critics? If they failed at this new venture, how would she respond? "Tomorrow they may taste our salsa," she whispered to the soft night air, a flicker of anxiety shaping her thoughts. But soon, they must plant their own seeds. As she turned back toward the house, the question loomed larger. Could they handle the truth of what it meant to nourish not just plants, but lives? The sun cast a warm golden hue over the garden, illuminating the vibrant colors of the crops that had flourished against all odds. Tom and Sarah stood at the entrance of their small but blossoming business, their hearts swelling with pride as they prepared to welcome guests to their inaugural Grow With Us workshop. This moment marked their transformation from perceived failures to educators, guiding others in the journey they had conquered together. Weeks had passed since their encounter at the farmers market, and their engagement with the community had paid off. The workshops were fully booked, and not only had they gained newfound respect, but Sarah also found herself enveloped in a profound sense of purpose. She had evolved from simply seeking validation to actually shaping the narrative around her family's story, crafting connections that empowered others. On that morning, the garden buzzed with energy as Sarah set up the tables adorned with fresh vegetables and homemade salsa. She felt a surge of confidence flood through her as she greeted the eager participants, ready to embark on this journey of growth. "It's about nourishing not just the plants, but our community," she reminded herself. Each person that turned up was not just a customer. They were part of a greater mission she had conceived. As she engaged with attendees, sharing techniques on planting and cultivating their own gardens, she saw their faces light up with discovery. Each aha moment felt like a personal victory, a tangible affirmation of her hard work and dedication. This is what it means to truly thrive, she thought, recalling how only months ago, their future had seemed bleak. Tom, too, seemed rejuvenated. His passion for gardening was now complemented by his role as a mentor. Together, they demonstrated the importance of soil health and proper watering techniques. The harmony between them had blossomed, their shared vision giving rise to a new norm, one where hope and resilience took center stage. By the end of the day, they surveyed the rows of seedlings planted by their workshop participants, a community cultivated in their wake. Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her here. No longer shackled by despair, she had proven that her vision was achievable. "Didn't I tell you we had something impactful to share?" She nudged Tom, her voice brimming with satisfaction. He smiled, a warmth in his eyes that spoke volumes of the journey they had taken. Moments later, whispers of their success reached the rival stall owner, who had watched the workshop unfold from a distance. Instead of the smugness she had once experienced, now came a hint of begrudging respect. In the weeks that followed, their workshops expanded, and they began forging partnerships with other local growers. Sarah found their reach extending. Not only had they transformed their lives, but they had begun to cultivate hope in others. The garden that had represented their struggles now symbolized sustained triumph and community spirit. They were thriving, and she wore her success like a badge of honor. As Sarah prepared the last of her produce for a local market, she felt a swell of pride. She had proven herself in ways she never anticipated. No longer seen as the couple scorned by their neighbors, they were now esteemed members of the community, a couple dedicated to lifting others through education and empowerment. The transformation was not just about the thriving vegetable business. It came from the realization that they could foster change and inspire resilience, while simultaneously healing herself and Tom from their past. With concrete achievements and renewed confidence, Sarah held her head high. Each vegetable sold represented the perseverance that flowed through her veins. They had conquered their moments of doubt, and through resilience, they had cultivated not just a garden, but also their family's future. Standing at the market, she smiled at the people who once whispered behind her back. They had become doubters turned believers, allies in the story of perseverance that she now championed. Sarah realized this was just the beginning. She had come full circle, once bound by the weight of judgment, now lifted by their successes and the support of a community they had helped to create. In nurturing vegetables, she had also nurtured her own spirit. As she prepared to step into the next chapter of their lives, a sense of fulfillment enveloped her. She had propelled herself into a position of influence, determined to carry this mission forward. To anyone watching from the sidelines, she would say, "Believe in your potential to transform. There's greatness in perseverance and purpose." And with that, Sarah knew this was not just her victory, it was their victory. What began as a garden had grown into a legacy of resilience. Remember, the journey of growth doesn't end here. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.